So let's talk about frameworks here for a second. Now, when I'm dealing with frameworks, I in particular enjoy a nice cherry wood. No, not a good joke? Okay. And when you think about it, a framework is simply a blueprint. And just like a blueprint for a building, you have different blueprints representing different technologies. For example, you have a blueprint for the construction of walls. You'll have a different blueprint for plumbing. You'll have a different blueprint for electrical. And there's different types of frameworks out there for cybersecurity, each that are categorized in slightly different ways. Most organizations will typically have a particular framework already in place and will use multiple frameworks to help strengthen their cybersecurity posture. Now, there are some frameworks that are associated with certification programs, and that's basically just to show that your staff or anybody who's involved can apply the methodologies that they've been taught successfully. So let's talk about these different frameworks. One of the more popular ones to date is done by an organization called NIST, which is short for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Now, their particular framework is very distinct from other frameworks by focusing exclusively on IT security rather than the different service provisions that IT may have to support. The framework consists of three different parts. The first being the framework core. The core identifies 5 cybersecurity functions, which include identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. And each function is divided into categories, and each of those categories can have subcategories. Now, the purpose for the framework core is to present industry standards and guidelines as well as practices in a manner that allows communication of cybersecurity activities and the outcomes of those activities across the organization, from the executive level all the way down to the operational level. The important thing here is communication between each of the different levels of the organization, unlike some government agencies who don't even talk to one another. The next level is referred to as the tiers. Don't cry. Let's see if I can really stretch this one. And since we're talking about cybersecurity, you might have some fears. So therefore, I could say Tears for Fears. Classic 80s rock group. I know, everybody wants to rule the world. Oh, come on, stop shouting at me. Do you want me to stop the puns now? The tiers characterizes your company's practice over a range, from partial to risk-informed to repeatable or even adaptive. These tiers reflect the progression from informal reactive responses to approaches that are extremely agile and risk-informed. Now, during the tier selection, your company should consider its current risk management practices, the threat environment, if there's any legal or regulatory requirements, as well as business and mission objectives, and finally the organization constraints. The third element is the profiles. The profiles simply represent the outcome based on the business needs that an organization has selected from the framework categories and subcategories. They're just simply a statement of the current cybersecurity outcomes and the target cybersecurity outcomes. This allows your company to identify investments that would be most productive in closing the gap in your cybersecurity capabilities. Now, NIST isn't the only framework out there. There are also other frameworks, including ISO. No, we're not going to burn a CD for you youngins. That's the disk that we used to put in our computers. No, this is short for the International Organization of Standardization. They've actually gone out and produced a cybersecurity framework in conjunction with another organization referred to as IEC, or the International Electrotechnical Commission. Now, this particular framework has to be purchased, and the purchase price depends on the options that you want. Typically, it's about 118 Swiss francs, which is about 118 US dollars, at least at the time of this recording. I think the highest price is $149. Two other frameworks include TUGAF, and I always chuckle when I hear this particular acronym just because I'm a big fan of the movie Princess Bride. To blave, to bluff, instead of true love. Homework assignment for you, go watch that one. Now, TUGAF is actually the Open Group Architecture Framework, and this is another standard for enterprise architecture modeling. Now, when I say architectural modeling, we're talking about the discipline of designing and implementing policies, procedures, assets, and other functions to make sure that they all meet the current and future goals of the company. SASA, which is the acronym for the Sherwood Applied Business Security Architecture. Wait for it, Sherwood. Are you guys going to get the point here? Okay, that's all my Robin Hood references there. But this framework is basically a methodology for providing information insurance aligned with the business needs, and it's driven by risk analysis. Now, this methodology actually gets applied using life cycle models as a strategy for planning, designing, implementation, management, and measurement. COBIT is another one, which is short for Control Objectives for Information and Relative Technologies. This again is a IT governance framework with security as its core component. The framework was established originally back in '96, and the most current version was released in 2012. This is also a commercial product that you'd have to purchase. Now, COBIT has training and accreditation associated to it, so we're looking at a certification. And the certification for COBIT is known as the CISA, which is the Certified Information Systems Auditor, as well as the CISM, which is the Certified Information Security Manager. And finally, we have everyone's favorite, ITIL. Now, ITIL's been around since about '89, as I recall. It was created by the UK government. The latest edition, I believe, was done, it's updated in 2011, version 3, but it's basically a best practices framework, and it emphasizes the alignment of IT service management with business needs. So you can see there are several different choices that you have. When choosing a framework or multiple frameworks, just make sure that it aligns to the needs of your business.